In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the first few steps of getting started with a 3D landscape assignment. First thing that we need to do is we're going to go ahead and create our canvas, and the assignment asks for a 800 by 600 canvas, and at this point we'll go ahead and give it a name as well. And I do want to make my background transparent, or my canvas transparent, when I get started on this project. And I'll explain why as we get going, because all of your elements will be on their own layer. So we're going to make sure we choose transparent. If you don't, it's going to cause a little confusion as you get started. So you'll see right now I actually have a layer, not a background, and this is not locked. So this right here is where I'm going to place my first element. And in this case I'm going to go ahead and place my sky, which is the first required element that I need to add to my project. So with my element here, I'm going to go ahead and create my sky. So I'm going to do that first by renaming this layer, and I do that by simply double clicking on the name of the layer, and I'm going to call this sky. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my drawing tool, and I'm going to just draw a blue sky for now. I could always go back in and I can change this later on, but simply by making a blue sky, and I'm going to go ahead and just make a blue sky looks like that for now. And what I'm going to do is my next element asks me to create some grass, and rather than putting that grass on the sky layer, I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer for this element, and I would suggest all of your elements have their own layer. This is going to give you a lot more control in the future, and then as we start to talk about layer styles, you're going to go ahead and be able to apply layer styles to all of your individual elements rather than all of the elements at the same time. And this little icon right down here, this allows me to create a new layer, and by default it's just simply going to give it a layer and a number. And before I add an element here, I'm just going to go ahead and give this element a name, or give this layer a name. I'm going to go ahead and make another rectangle. In this case my grass is going to be green. So I'm going to make some green grass, and I'm just going to make another rectangle down here, and so now I have sky and I have some grass. And next thing it asks me to do is I'm going to make a house with a door and a window. I'm going to put each of those elements on their own layer. Again, this is going to give me a lot more control in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer, and I'm going to call this layer house. And I'm just going to, let's say, make a sort of a brownish sort of house here. And I'm just going to make a rectangle here, and it's going to be on this house layer, so I can add that layer there. And I'm going to go ahead and make a door and a window, and I can make a roof, and I would suggest putting all of those elements on their own layers. That way it's going to give you more control. At a bare minimum, I would put all of the elements for your house on the layer called house. So if you want to put the door and the window and the roof on the house layer, you can do that. But I like to keep them all individual. That way it gives me control. And I'll show you this here. So if I wanted this to be called door, and I wanted to make a, let's say a black door on this house, when I go ahead and draw that rectangle, if I don't put it in the right spot, it's going to be fine, because I can then go ahead and move that door around individually. If I went ahead and I put that door on the house layer, I couldn't move that door around afterwards. This also allows me to transform the elements that I've made. So if I want my door wider or bigger or taller, because it's on its own layer, I could go ahead and make that change. If that wasn't on its own layer, I wouldn't be able to manipulate that door individually. So I can go ahead and add my window, and I could add my roof. I'm also going to need to add, because I have a blue sky, I'm going to go ahead and make a sun, and I'm going to make some clouds. And the sun is going to be pretty easy. I'm just going to go ahead and make a circle shape. I'm going to make that sun kind of a bright yellow. And with that sun, what I'm going to do also is I'm going to give it a 2-pixel border, but I'm going to make that pixel kind of a orangish color, just to kind of define the edge of that sun. Again, I want to make a layer for this by itself. Go ahead and give me the sun layer. So when I go ahead and I draw this sun, because I created my objects in the wrong order, it's not going to be that big of a deal. I can go ahead and just put that sun behind the house, where if I had put all of these individual elements on their own, on the same layer, I would be stuck in the order in which I made them. So this is going to give me a lot of cool features in the future. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make my clouds as well. And this is where if I paid attention to the previous lessons, I'm going to go ahead inside of my brush tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to load some tools. And I'm going to come down here to nature, and you're actually going to see that there is a cloud brush tip, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and just add these clouds. Let's say I want this cloud right here. Now I can see that my clouds are way too big for the canvas that I actually have. So I'm going to have to go ahead and change the size of these clouds before I even come in here. So that looks like a pretty decent size cloud there. I definitely want to change my color, so I'm going to make sure that my clouds are white. And again, I want to put them on their own layer. So I'm going to go ahead and create that layer. I want to put that on the top. Call these clouds. Then I can come in here and I can actually place some clouds in the sky. And I can put those clouds over the sun because I had them on their own layer. It gives me a lot of control. And if I ever wanted to clean those clouds up a little bit, I could always come back in and I could erase some of those clouds without erasing the other elements that are in my landscape, because these clouds are on their own layer. Again, placing them all on the same layer doesn't give me the control that I want to at the end. It's also not going to allow me to do some advanced features that I'll show you here in the future. And then the last thing I'm going to show you here before I let you go is we're going to go ahead and we're going to use that same paintbrush tool. We're going to load the grass texture. So I'm going to come back on more, we'll come back to nature, and I can see that there's these grasslands. So if I want to really add some three-dimensional look to this, I can go ahead and add some grass texture. Again, I want to make sure that it's not white. I'm going to go ahead and have some green grass, and I could go ahead and place it right on this grass layer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. I'll call this grassland. So when I go ahead and place some of this grass around, if I accidentally made a mistake and I wanted to get rid of these little grasslands painted areas, I could try to come back here and I could use my eraser tool and I could clean those up. Or if I didn't want any of them, I could come in here and actually just simply delete this grasslands layer, and that's going to get rid of all of those textures. And if I said that I really didn't like the way that that brush looked, I wanted to add something else, let's say this one here, gives me a lot more control. I can add another layer. But having this layer control is going to be extremely important. It gives me a lot of control as I continue to build this object. So that should be enough to go ahead and get you started. Make sure that you're taking a look at all of the required elements that you have to add to your 3D landscape. And I'll come back here in a video in the future and show you how we really can make our 3D landscape pop.